everyone, I'm Ace of Clay, I'm a sculptor, and every week I make a new sculpture. Happy New Year, welcome to the first video of 2025 where I will be sculpting Count Orlok from Nosferatu. If you haven't seen this movie yet, of course there's going to be a couple spoilers in this video, but I highly recommend it. It is such a cool, different type of horror. It's not gory and there's not like a lot of jump scares or anything. It's just really, really eerie and creepy and unsettling, and I just loved every second of it. So I hope you enjoy watching me sculpt Count Orlok from it. I think he turned out really good and I'm excited to start this new year with all of you. And before we jump in, don't forget to check out aceofclay.com to see all of my latest sculpting products, Hidden World merch, and more. I just recently launched the official Super Poker. This is a multifunctional stainless steel sculpting tool. You see me use it in pretty much every single one of my videos. I absolutely love it and I'm so excited to share it with you. So head on over to my website if you want to grab one for yourself. And now without further ado, let's sculpt Count Orlok. Alright, let's get started. I've got my wooden plaque here with the pre-drilled holes that fit my 10 gauge armature wire, and I'm going to start shaping out Count Orlok's body. We've got his torso and legs there, and then his arms are this separate piece that I'm attaching with some 16 gauge wire. Once the arms are on, I'm going to brush on some Bacon Bond where I'll be adding my Super Sculpey Ultralight to bulk him out. This step can also be done with aluminum foil, but I prefer to use the Ultralight because I feel like I have more control. And for the last bulking step, I'm just going to poke in his neck and then finish things up, add him back to his base, and bake it. And once he's baked and cooled down, it's time to add our final layer of clay. This is Super Sculpey Original. I'm just adding a nice even sheet over all of my ultralight areas, and then I'm going to start working on the legs. After rolling out my snake of clay for the leg, I cut a slit down the back, but I didn't go all the way through, just so the clay easily wraps around my armature wire. Now, because the majority of his legs are going to be covered by his cloak, I'm not too worried about what they look like. I do want to make sure that the proportions are correct though, because if they're not, it'll just look weird. Now, the bottom of his legs will be showing, so I just want to bring them to a taper so that they look like long boots. Then we're going to add his feet and blend everything together seamlessly. Once his foot's been blended in, we're going to add a snake of clay like so, and blend it in to create some folds in his boot. Now let's finish off the other boot really quick. Before I start working on the rest of his outfit, I want to add his neck. Now let's add some folds and wrinkles to his chest area. To create the accent fabric on his tunic, I'm texturing it with this texture sheet I got from Michaels. After cutting it to size, let's stick it on. Now I'm pressing in a line down the middle with my Super Poker to create the opening. Now let's add his collar. And I just want to refine things a little bit with my Super Poker before I go any further. Now I'm going to go down the front and add the little straps for the buttons. Now I'm going to go ahead and add his little band around his waist that holds everything together, and then pop on his buttons. To make the fabric look gathered and stretched, I'm adding some little snakes of clay and blending those in. For some added variance, I'm using my Super Poker and rocking it onto the surface to create some more wrinkles. Now let's finish it off with his little rope belt. To give the surface a nice texture, I'm mixing both Bacon Bond and clay softener together and then dabbing them onto the surface. For this to be effective, just make sure you use more Bacon Bond than clay softener, or else it'll just level out and be smooth. Alright, this is for my fellow sculptors out there and those of you who spend most of your day sitting. We all know that sculpting is so rewarding, but this requires us to be sitting for hours on end, and that's definitely not the best for our backs. I know sitting and sculpting all day can really take a toll on me. I'm so absorbed in my work that I forget to stand, take breaks, and even eat sometimes. And I thought about trying a standing desk, but that's really not for me. After 6 years of doing this pretty much Monday through Friday, I knew I had to get some help and I wasn't going to change my workflow, and that's where I came across this week's sponsor, ZocDoc. ZocDoc is this really cool free website that helps you find top-rated doctors, even chiropractors, right near you. Just search what you're looking for and you will get a full list of specialists who can take your insurance, and they all have real reviews and open appointments that you can book right away. You don't even have to talk to anyone, just book in a few clicks. I've actually booked a couple chiropractor appointments with them, and it has helped so much with my comfort while sculpting and even in my gym sessions. So if this sounds like something you could benefit from, head on over to ZocDoc.com/aceofclay to get started. At the end of the day, your health and body are so important, and going into the new year, join me in taking better care of yourself and get that sore back straightened out. So if you'd like to support my channel and feel better, head on over to ZocDoc.com/aceofclay and get back to feeling like yourself again. Alright, now let's work on the free hanging part of his tunic. I made this out of cosclay so that it stays flexible after it's baked. I trimmed it off with some of that Michael's texture sheet texture, and then we're attaching it with some Bacon Bond, of course. And it's gonna meet right where we want it. Perfect. Now, Count Orlok is rocking a massive fur-lined coat, but he's wearing it more like a shawl. His arms won't actually go into the sleeves. Instead, they'll just be tucked underneath. And because of that, I'm only bulking out the arms to give them some presence. I'm not worried about them being aesthetically pleasing. Now for the big fur coat I just mentioned, again, of course, this is cosplay again, and I'm just going to add a little bit of fabric that's going to be peeking out of the inside edge, and then we're going to apply it to him and blend it in, make it look right. After texturing that little strip of fur with my super poker, we're going to fold it onto him and then add a couple pleats so that the fabric has a little bit of variance. Now let's do the same thing on the other side. It's always easier and much more convincing if you shape the folds in the fabric before attaching it. This gives you way more control, and afterwards it's just a matter of fine tuning. Also remember, your character is supposed to be wearing fabric, not a stretched blob of clay. So keep that in mind as you work to make the material look natural and realistic. Now let's add these details that go down the breast portion of the coat, and I'm sure every element of his costume has a formal name. I just don't know what they are. But I do know what I'm going to attach next with some Bacon Bond are tassels. Now, luckily, I managed to find some reference photos of the actual costume, which turned out to be a lifesaver since the movie is so physically dark. There isn't a single clear shot of Count Orlok where you can really make out the details of his outfit. And don't get me wrong, I love that aesthetic. I love the sense of mystery it creates, but it's definitely not ideal when you're trying to sculpt it. Anyway, I digress. Moving on, I've now created and attached his ridiculously long sleeves, finishing them off with fur cuffs for that extra touch. Now let's make his giant fur collar. After smushing it into place, I'm going to texture it with my super poker. And as I texture the fur, I'm focusing on adding plenty of variation to keep it looking natural and a bit, rough around the edges. I don't want it to look overly neat and polished. That's not the vibe, but I also don't want it to end up looking like a total mess. It's all about striking that perfect balance between wild and intentional. And there we go, his coat's looking pretty good. Now let's sculpt his creepy, bony, long-fingered hand that's poking out of the one side. After creating the base of the hand, I'm attaching the fingers one at a time. And this is going to be one of the rare occasions where my sculpture has 5 fingers instead of 4. Now let's give him a nice acrylic set. And there we go. After adding a little vein, his hand is all set. Now for his head, I'm covering this ball of aluminum foil in some Super Sculpey Living Doll, and we're going to start by poking out the eye sockets with my medium ball stylus. For the eyes, I'm popping in some oval shapes, and then I'm going to blend the edges in with my spoon tool. Now let's press on an eyelid. And let's do this again on the other side. Now before I add the lower lids and eye bags, I'm going to attach his cheekbones because the eye bags are going to rest on top of these. Alright, eye bag time with a tiny snake of clay. He's got these very dramatic double layered eye bags, kind of like the ones I have when I wake up in the morning. Now for his big brow bone. We're going to start on one side and then repeat the process on the other. When you're blending with your Super Poker, you want to make sure that you're rolling it onto the surface to blend the two pieces of clay together, not just dragging it. This is way more effective. Now let's enhance his jawline by adding a little more clay. Using the tip of my spoon tool, I'm going to press in where his mouth is going to be, and then stick on his nose and blend that in. Normally poking in the nostrils like this creates enough of a protrusion on the outside, but I need to make it a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to add a little tiny ball of clay on each side. Now for some nasolabial folds. And we can't forget his chin. The chin always makes a huge difference once you add it on a face that you're sculpting. And his little pouty bottom lip. Now for his mustache. I know this little detail stirred up some controversy, and I'll admit I would have preferred him without it. I also wish he had his iconic two pointy front teeth, but hey, the mustache was a historic nod. This guy's design draws heavily from Vlad the Impaler, the inspiration for the original Count Dracula, and Vlad had a mustache. I think the directors even mentioned somewhere, if you can find a Transylvanian nobleman without a mustache, let me know. So there we go. Mustache it is. Now I'm just going to take my Super Poker and add a little bump to his nose. Now let's add some forehead wrinkles. And it's ear time. Now, on top of barely being able to see his costume in the movie, the same goes for his face. You catch like glimpses of it here and there, but nothing is ever bright enough to make out enough detail to sculpt it properly. So I had to get creative. I started searching for someone who might have already sculpted him, and lo and behold, I found a mask company that nailed it. I was able to reference all the details from their sculpt. So huge shout out to Midnight Special Effects on TikTok for saving the day with your incredible work. All right, now it's time to add the decay to his face. Now, fun fact, back in the day, vampires were basically rotting, blood-sucking corpses. So the director of the movie paid homage to that as well and made Mr. Orlok here a blood-sucking, rotting corpse. And there we go. His face and ears are done. Now for the back of the head, it's almost like the skin is just like peeled off and rotting. So we're going to go ahead and texture that a little bit and make that look nice and gross. And once we're done with that, we're going to add a couple fine strands of hair neatly parted to the side. Alright, now that his head is done, we're going to stick it on his body and then connect the neck to the head with some more clay so that it blends nicely, brushing on some Bacon Bond too to smooth things out, and then we are going to bake him. But before we bake him, we're going to brush on some clay softener, just remove the fingerprints on his face really quick, and then we are going to texture his jacket with the same technique we used for the tunic, mixing Bacon Bond and clay softener. And there we go, he's ready to bake. And once he's baked and cooled down, I want to add his hat, but I want it to be removable, so I'm going to dab on some cornstarch first, then I'm going to press on my clay, and then once I'm done sculpting the hat, the cornstarch will make the hat really easy to remove and I can bake it separately. And the Super Poker is back, and we're going to texture up that hat with lots of fur. Now this fur is different than the fur on his jacket, so I'm using short strokes to make it look like what I would assume would be beaver fur. That's what they usually use to make hats out of back in the day. I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will. But anyway, let's get this textured up and then add some feathers to the front and a little gem. Now look how easy it is to take that off. Now without disturbing the inside, we're going to bake this, and I'm going to create a nice custom stand out of aluminum foil to hold it up in the oven, like that. Alright, let's bake it. Alright, now it's time for paint. We're going to start by airbrushing this guy, but I'm going to use my brand new Mobius airbrush from Gallery. They were nice enough to send this to me to try out, and it's actually really nice. It's a lot easier to control than the other one I use. I didn't really know that was a thing. I thought I was just bad at airbrushing. But anyway, it came with some loop here, and then it has an airflow adjustment knob in the front. So I'm just going to screw on that paint cup. And then they also sent me this cute little stand. So if you want to check them out and maybe grab something, I can get you 10% off if you go through the link in the description box below. All right, now let's put this thing to work. We're going to start by giving him a completely black primer coat. In addition to the airflow control knob, there's also a knob in the back that allows you to control how much pressure it takes to push the lever. So this really helps you control how much paint you're letting out. And just so you know, they did not tell me to say any of this. They literally just wanted to send me an airbrush to try it. And I told them if I like it, I'll use it in one of my videos. And I do. I get sent stuff all the time, and a lot of it doesn't make the cut. But if I like something, I am more than happy to share it with you. All right, after getting him completely black, we are going in with some dark brown and adding some highlights here and there. His costume is very dark, very monochromatic, but there are little, pops of brown here and there that do make a really big difference. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. Oh, hi. Now I'm going in with an even lighter brown and further highlighting things. Now here's a fun little trick. I am pointing my airbrush straight down onto his face so that it highlights things as if a light is shining above his head. Then I can use these points as reference when I start painting him traditionally. We're just going in with our old-fashioned paintbrush here and painting all those details on his jacket. This painting style that I'm using for him includes a lot of layers and texture. I'm not just going in and just painting, solid brown on all these different parts. I'm adding texture with my paintbrush, as you can see here. And, here's a little bit of dry brushing, and there's just lots and lots of layers of color that are going to bring this guy to life. Well, not really to life, to death. After getting that base brown tone down, I'm going in with a dark brown wash on top of it and just letting it melt into all the nooks and crannies. And then we're going to add a little bit of shadow here and there, dry brush some more, paint the gem on his hat, and keep going. Now I'm just going in with a little bit of watered down rusty brown here and there to add some dimension to his coat. Now, using the airbrush spray that I did on his face as a guide, I'm going in with some lighter gray and adding all of the paint to his face, focusing it on those brighter areas that were created by the airbrush. And then eventually we're just going to layer this enough with lighter shades of gray over and over and over, and it's all eventually going to blend together and look good. So now that first layer of gray is on, I've lightened it a little bit more, and we're going to sort of kiss certain areas of his face to highlight them further. Now, throughout the entire movie, his eyes, I think, are dark brown, but there's a scene where he wakes up in his coffin and his eyes are white, and I think that looks really cool, so we're gonna make his eyes white on my sculpt here. Now for the stash. And the hair. And using some purplish red, we're going to paint all of the wounds and decaying parts of his face. And let's finish off his eyes with a coat of Americana Triple Thick Glossy Varnish. And the gem on his hat, of course. To finish off his hair, I'm adding a nice dark brown wash to give it some dimension. Then we're going to paint his base black. And then stick him on and give him back his hat. There we go. Now say it with me. And he's done! My Count Orlok sculpture is complete. Let me know how you think I did in the comments. I think he looks really cool. I really love the face, and I think I captured his creepy essence. So again, let me know what you think in the comments, and if you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it. As always, thank you so much for watching and being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok at Ace of Clay, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.